Congress returning to a changed political landscape as lawmakers arrive in Washington for a lame duck session. They've got about 60 days before Democrats take over the House in January. And both parties are facing, well, a leadership battle, if you will. Dr. Jeannie Zaino is a political science professor at Iona College. Stephen Sigmund is Senior Vice President of Global Strategy Group and a Democratic strategist. Thank you both for coming on. I first want to ask you what you make of Nancy Pelosi pulling the gender card.
Well, you know, in a year in which Nancy Pelosi, we're going to see at least 102, if not 103, maybe more women coming to the House. You know, I am not a big fan of pulling the gender card because I think Nancy Pelosi is probably the best choice for the Democrats at this point. So I don't think she needs to do that. But I think in this year, it's what everybody is talking about, women taking over the House. And so I think the woman who raised so much money to get Democrats there, of course, replacing her with a man is something that I think is, you know, sort of foreboding at this point.
Let me ask a man. You know, if I'm up for a job, I don't want to be looked at for my gender. I want to be looked at for my experience.
I don't think you have to look at her for her gender. I mean, Nancy Pelosi is going to be the speaker. And she said that this is transitional, but she's going to be the speaker.
But if she's so sure of it, then why is she pulling out the punches before she enters the ring?
Because there'll be some Sturm und Drang and there'll be some votes against her. But here's the bottom line. She doesn't need to pull any kind of card. She just orchestrated and engineered one of the biggest takeovers of Congress in history since Watergate. She raised more money than anybody's raised really in history. And, you know, this is a person who's been attacked, vilified, claimed to be pulling the gender card her entire life. And she's still standing, and most of those people who attacked and vilified her are not.
Okay, let's let the viewers decide whether she is or is not pulling the gender card. There was an interview on Sunday with CBS Face the Nation, and Nancy Pelosi spoke about the male-dominated congressional structure. She says Hillary Clinton's defeat in 2016 was a primary reason she sought to extend her time in the White House. And I want you to hear this, and then we'll come back and discuss.
You cannot have the four leaders of Congress, the President of the United States, these five people, and not have the voice of women, especially since women were the majority of the voters, the workers in campaigns, and now part of this glorious victory. When I came to Congress, there were 12 Democratic women. I said, we have to change this. Now we'll have close to 90.
Okay, so when Nancy Pelosi came to Washington, Democrats had only 12 women in the chamber. Now they have about 90. So she says if Hillary had won, she'd go home. They have 90 women, so it's not like there's a shortage of women, but she still believes that it is a male-dominated job.
Look, I think this is important to her. I mean, she wasn't pulling the gender card there. She was telling you reality. And this is a person who has been in Congress for a long time, who has fought through a male-dominated structure for decades and decades. And I think it's important to her to be one of the leaders of one of the four leaders for this period of time.
And let me just say, you know, not to say I don't believe all politicians, but I'm not sure I believe Nancy Pelosi was ready to leave had Hillary Clinton come either. I think it's convenient to say that now. I do believe Nancy Pelosi does need to build up a leadership bench. The Democratic Party the leadership is older. They need a new generation. So I think she should take 6 months a year, do that, and then move forward. That's what I would recommend.
That's fair. I mean, she said she's going to be a transitional leader, and she needs to start proving that.
Okay. All right. I want to switch gears now to gun control, something the Democrats have vowed they are going to take up when they take over in January. The deadly mass shooting, obviously, in California, sparking a major debate. There were many Democrats that said, in fact, if they were to win Republican-held seats, that they would make this a top issue. Then a day after dozens of Democrats who campaign on promises to strengthen gun laws, they were elected to the House of Representatives. And I want to bring up one example, Kim Schreier, Washington's 8th District. She's one of the many of Democrats who backed stronger gun regulations. She flipped Republican-controlled seats in last week's midterm elections. The issue obviously is going to be high on the list here, but the question is, are Republicans going to meet Democrats somewhere in the middle when it comes to gun control? Because Republicans maintain one thing, it's not gun control, it's mental health, and that is an issue that needs to be addressed as well. I'll let you go.
I think they both should be and can be addressed, and hopefully that is what happens. But I think, you know, we don't know yet what's going to happen because I'm not so certain Democrats have enough votes to move forward. They made great advances this year on this issue, but they may not have the numbers yet to move forward this year on gun control in the way they want, but they certainly could compromise with Republicans, because I think most Democrats agree that mental health is a huge challenge.
In this case, mental health was the #1 problem. This person was red flagged. Police had visited their home several times. He shot up his mother's home with whom he lived, suffered PTSD, a former veteran. I mean, obviously, something slipped through the cracks, and mentally ill are going to get their hands on guns, whether they're banned or not.
Look, there's been a sea change on this issue in politics. I mean, Democrats for 20 years ran away from this issue. And this year, 15 Republicans who had A ratings in the NRA running against Democrats who had F ratings, the Democrats won, and they ran on gun control. And unfortunately, it's in large part because of the litany of horrors that the American people have seen through all of mass shootings of children in places of worship, and in that Las Vegas concert where the same people a year later, less than a year later, were killed. I mean, if this Congress does not take action on this issue, this is like Houston, we have a problem. And the American people are saying they want change, reasonable change, universal background checks, to making sure people with a history of mental illness or domestic abuse can't have access to guns.
Right.
I mean, there's an obvious need here that the American people are calling for, and both sides ought to take action on it.
Stephen Sigmund, thank you very much. And Dr. Jeannie Zainal, great to see you both. Thank you so much.
And Max Rose might not be backing down, but if Nancy Pelosi wins, will he have to? And what does my next guest make of all of this? Missouri Democratic Congressman Emanuel Cleaver. Congressman Cleaver, thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you.
A lot of folks who won in the midterms, a lot of Democrats, voiced their opposition to Nancy Pelosi right up front. In fact, some very young, dynamic stars, emerging stars in your party, Joe Cunningham, Connor Lamb, saying, hey, there needs to be fresh leadership. Do they have a point?
Well, yes. Under normal circumstances, I think we would certainly want new leadership to emerge, and it's going to emerge. I just did a TV show with a young person today, and I believe very strongly that he, as well as a lot of others, are going to begin to rise. However, in the unique situation that we find ourselves, Nancy Pelosi is very likely going to be elected Speaker. I mean, we've come from nowhere to the majority, and it's going to be difficult to push her back. And right now, there's nobody even opposed to it. Nobody is. There are those opposed to it. I apologize, but there is no announced opponent to her, so she's going to win unless something happens that we haven't had any idea to think about.
And I understand you signed a letter of support. Now you are on board with backing Nancy Pelosi as leader?
I'm going to support Nancy Pelosi. We have a system where either I'm going to have to vote for Nancy Pelosi or I'll vote for Mickey Mouse or one of the Kansas City Chiefs, Mahomes, probably the quarterback. And that's what I've been telling people. I mean, most people don't realize that anybody in the country can be a speaker and they don't have to be a member of Congress. So I'm going to vote for Nancy Pelosi, but that's not the only choice. There are other choices.
What's the final, why do you decide on that? Is it because she can raise money, or do you really believe in her leadership abilities? I mean, yes, she's been in the position before, but you guys also suffered some catastrophic losses under her leadership.
Absolutely, we did. And I think she recognizes that, and all of us recognize it. We're in a tough spot right here. We need some seasoned leadership over the next 2 years. We need people who've been there before. We're in the majority in the House, but we've got to work with the Senate, and we've got to work with the President. That's not easy to work with. And so it's going to require someone who understands, give and take. We're not going to have our way. Somebody who also is not coming in here screaming, we've got to do impeachment. And she has said that very openly and very clearly. And I remind people, she voted against she voted for the motion to table the articles of impeachment, as did I, when they were introduced earlier.
And yet Axios had an article, I think it was yesterday, 85 investigation targets already singled out by Democrats. Everything is going to be requested, from taxes to the Space Force. I mean, is that going to be the way to go? You got 2 years to prove to the American public that you can legislate and do things. I mean, going to war with President Trump, it just doesn't sound like a smart idea.
Well, it's not a smart idea, and when my election was called and I made my speech last Tuesday, the first thing I said is that I'm not going into the new term to concentrate on Donald Trump. I'm going to the new term concentrating on the people of the 5th Congressional District of Missouri. And I think most people are doing that. Reporters are constantly asking, so what are you going to concentrate on? Now, I don't think most members, I've not had one conversation with a single member who said, we got to do impeachment. Not one.
Wow.
And so I think in some ways the media, and they're doing their job, but they're asked, so are you going to do impeachment? No, we're not going to do that. That's not even on the agenda.
Well,
what is on the agenda is making certain that we have checks and balances.
Well, sir, there's a term for that. Trump coined it. I'll let you think about what it is, and I would go with Mahomes too, the way he throws those passes. Thank you very much, you gentlemen. We always appreciate having you on.
Good to be with you.